All right. Hello, everybody. It is March 9th at 6:30 p.m., and I'm calling to order the Operations Committee meeting.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda discussion and possible consensus on the response to the COVID-19 crisis.
Can I have a second?
I second it.
Okay, so discussion. And consensus?
No,
Or wait.
no, just to add it, we'll just take a vote.
Okay, so we'll take a vote to add it to the agenda.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, so the motion stands.
Yes. So we can, did you
All
want it at,
Did you want to go now? With
Yes,
that?
if we
Okay,
could.
sure.
The reason why we added this, and we apologize, but we just got off a phone call with the governor's office. It was announced this morning that there was going to be a phone call at 5 o'clock. So we wanted to make sure that we brought to you the information that we just received. I have 3 pieces of information that I'll pass around. These are from the Commissioner of Education's office. So if you could take, I'm going to pass these around because I know sometimes passing we get confused. So I'm going to pass one at a time. So there's a cover letter. So if you could each take one. I made plenty of copies. The second one, I'll pass around. And the third one, and then if Ms. Latour will just take the extras for us.
Sure.
So the main crux of the call with the governor's office was really to talk about crowds and assemblies and then direction from all the departments. On the phone call, there were representatives from the variety of departments at the state, including the State Board of Education or the State Department of Education, as well as public health and other agencies, early childhood and such. In the conversation, the governor, and I know it's already on the internet at this time, has recommended that all events or all assemblies of 100 people or more should be canceled. So that is why we wanted to talk to you this evening, because we have some this week and we have a variety of things that we need to bring to your attention and move forward with ASAP. At present time, just focusing on the crowds and cancellation, we would like to recommend that field trips are canceled. We'd like to recommend that the musical at Sheehan is streamed rather than having an audience. We'd like to recommend that the sporting event, that is the Sheehan CIAC basketball tournament, is only participants, no fans. That was also on the call that was recommended. That's Thursday evening. We are recommending that the wellness fair this week be canceled. We are recommending that parent conferences in the next couple of weeks be canceled. And all school-based events. There's a myriad of events coming up over the next couple of weeks, father-daughter dances, book clubs, all those things. While we know it's very difficult, the governor, as I said yesterday in my emails to families and staff, we take direction from the experts. We take directions from those who are making those decisions. And I feel that it's incumbent upon us to take the direction from the governor. It's a recommendation. It's not a directive in the sense that he is mandating this. However, I think it was very clear, not only did the governor state this, the Commissioner of Education stated this, as well as other department heads stated this on the phone call. I did follow up this phone call immediately with our health department director, Steve Civitelli, and he also concurred that he would recommend that large assemblies be suspended at this point. The idea is that they're focusing on mitigation. They do not believe, schools and other offices need to close, but again, these events that are special events, they feel would be best to postpone these and press pause. We know that there's been a lot of work that goes into all of these things. We know the musical has obviously put out a lot of funds. We will do what we did last time when we had an unfortunate circumstance at Lyman Hall. Some board members might remember our Mary Poppins got sick, and we had to purchase the rental of equipment an additional week, and we, as a board, provided those funds. We will work with the musical crew at Sheehan to make sure that their expenses are covered as well, and make sure that we show them the respect that we afforded Lyman Hall at that unfortunate circumstance. We will have to take each event as they come, so we're looking at a 2 to 3 week period of canceling those events, and then we'll look at this again 2 to 3 weeks from that point. Excuse me. I have asthma, so I apologize. That is not,
Yeah, right.
Don't touch your face.
Don't touch your face.
That's right.
Yes.
sorry. So we are also the other, well, I'll pause for comment on that piece first.
I just have a quick question. So you mentioned things that were outside. Are they doing school assemblies inside, canceled if it's more than, if it's the full school too?
There was not direction on those activities because the students are in the building. They don't believe school needs to be canceled. It was more for extracurricular activities. That was the wording that they used for extracurricular, non-educational.
Okay.
That was what they were looking at.
So this would start with events starting when now?
We have another part of our recommendation as well. If we were to get approval on these, myself, Ms. Latour, and Ms. Veyu would excuse ourselves from this meeting, and we would message this out this evening, because we know that there are things that are occurring within the next 2 days, and we want to be proactive today. Well, those events would continue for today. I mean, we can't cancel anything tonight. This would take effect as of tomorrow. So I just want to be proactive because I know everybody is looking to us to make sure their children are safe and making sure that our staff are safe. So again, we just got off the phone call. It was a full over an hour, the phone call. And there were some questions. We listened to everything. So again, tonight's events will carry on as usual, but this would take effect tomorrow.
Streaming.
Oh,
We have to cross that bridge when we get to, that's one of the things that we have to look at. So we'll be working with IT to make sure that we have the ability to do that. We do stream the graduations at both schools, so we would have to look to make sure that we have the same capability to do that.
We can't postpone that event?
The musical, we could check with the director. Oftentimes, they purchase the rights for certain weeks and certain dates. So that could be costly to do so. And so I will explore all options with the music department. We will work collaboratively with them, but we want to make sure that we can offer the streaming possibility, since that was recommended also by the governor to look at events like that to be streamed.
Mrs. Raccio?
Yes, I know that at Yale, we had to cancel everything through April 15th. So is that every 2 to 3 week stage gonna work for us?
We can go longer. We were just starting there because we wanted to at least get the initial piece. We could, and we'll be happy to do this, we could look at a month.
I just don't know if there was a recommendation.
There was no recommendation.
Okay.
In the time frame, there was no recommendation. They just said that the idea was that large events that were non-educational,
Right.
when
Right.
Commissioner Cardona spoke and then the governor spoke.
Thank
They're
you.
canceling, just so you also know, they're canceling all conferences, state conferences. There's this large security conference that was announced that it's been canceled, and all other conferences they're trying to cancel as well.
Mrs. Purcell?
I was going to say, Ms. Recchio, I mean, we could do the 2 weeks out and then let people know that if you are 2 weeks or 3 weeks beyond that, you have to start thinking of plans of, in case
I'm
that
sure they're gonna
happens.
think of
And that
yeah.
ties into another recommendation that we have.
Right, do we need to vote, take consensus on
Well,
this first? or-
No, I think
or
we
just
could
do the
probably
whole
go
thing?
through the list.
Okay.
The other thing is, I just want to notify all of you, because I know the board has been very supportive. The Australian visit is canceled, so the students will not be coming from Australia. They received word last week. We obviously talked to them. So it's mutually agreed upon that it's not appropriate at this time. We are hoping to postpone it till next March of 2021. But again, we understand, they understand, and I just wanted the board to know that. So since we're not having any international travel for our students, we also felt it was important to not have international students come to us. And it was respectfully received, and they, of course, they were actually told they couldn't anyway, so it was a positive thing on both sides. The last thing that we'd like to recommend, and again, this is unprecedented for us, but we feel that these are very unprecedented times, that we would like to get permission from the board to have a late arrival this Friday for students so that teachers can work on plans. We put out a communication to staff or to parents today about stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. And so what we're looking at, or level 1, level 2, level 3, we're looking to use that morning time with teachers and paraeducators in the buildings to solidify plans, and also, like was just recommended, having teachers and administrators look at what are the events that are coming up beyond the next 2 weeks to plan proactively, so we can really move forward in a meaningful manner. So that's why, again, tonight was important, because we'd like to give parents as much time as possible. Since this is a new development, we want to give them time to provide or to set up childcare arrangements. That's something that we also were urged. It was urged for us as educators to communicate to our families from the Office of Early Childhood that was on the call, as well as the Governor's Office and the Commissioner of Education, that we need to make sure that we continue to communicate to parents that we need to have them, if they don't already have childcare plans in place, to start putting those in place in the events that schools need to do, like we're doing Friday, or close. So I just wanted to share that with you. That's another recommendation that we would like to make. I did pass out 3 pieces of information to you. We've received a lot of questions, rightfully so, and we've asked these questions. You'll notice on the letter from the Commissioner of Education, it does say postponing or cancellation of events. Districts in consultation with the municipal or district health department should consider the directives made to state agencies by the governor. So the governor is giving us directives in considering district planning for large events of 100 or more people. So again, that's why we're making the recommendation to you, which it talks about athletic events, school plays, spring concerts, field trips. So that's why that recommendation is made. Also, there's the state travel. So any business outside the state has been frozen by the governor. That's why we're looking at any out-of-state field trips have been canceled. And of course, the international trip with the students coming it has been canceled. So that's one piece of information. There is another piece of information, this chart, that it's a flow chart. The second piece, this was presented to us, and this is really talking about school closures and the 180-day requirement. And I think this chart actually does help and support what we met with our teachers union and administrators union about this morning. When we talk about level 1, level 2, and level 3 concerns, level 1 and level 2, schools would be open. There would be potential absences. Teachers would go about their business of getting students the makeup work. That would be level 1 and 2. That's what we want to make sure we have really solidified Friday morning. Level 3 was always the concern about, if we have to close for prolonged periods of time, do we have to provide online virtual learning for students? And what the state is suggesting, which was going to be our recommendation to the board, was that we would not implement distance learning, but we would, because there are so many nuances to it, that we would just extend the school year till June 30th. The challenge with the distance learning, to be very frank, is first of all, not so much access. We did our survey, we had a tremendous response rate. The challenge is with our students who have the need for accommodations and have IEPs and 504 plans. And we have an obligation for equal access to educational opportunities. And as the commissioner said, and I concur with on the phone call today, is that if you go with the distance learning option, then we have to be certain as a district without any doubt that our students are receiving their IEP hours and they're receiving their 504 hours. And I don't believe, as a superintendent of schools anywhere, anyone definitively could say that that would happen, because it would be very difficult. So the idea would be to extend the school year, and I know that that's not optimal for people, but at least those instructional days when we're back in school, services can be provided in the normal fashion that they traditionally are. And I think we owe that equitable opportunity to our students. So again, that is where the state lies on this. You could see it says SDE recommended no distance learning in lieu of on-site schooling. This does not mean, and as I messaged today in my communication to families that you all received, that we will not be offering learning opportunities for students through a website that the curriculum department is putting together. So there will be learning activities that students can do, so that when parents have their children home, and they, children want to do something and they want to have a productive opportunity, there will be activities posted for families for them to access. So we're not totally dismissing our responsibility, but we're just doing what we feel we can do well and do what's best for all of our students in an equitable manner.
Mrs. Purcell.
Okay, so April vacation. So how many days, are we still going like so many days and then
So
we
if
go to
we
April?
took, if for some reason, and again, this is if
Okay.
we had to close prior to April vacation, we have 15 school days to get us to June 30th. In
Okay.
addition, remember, we go an additional 3 days because we go 183 days versus 180. So we would have 18 days before we were below the 180-day school mark. The other document that I've provided is a waiver that the State Department is offering if a school goes below the 180 days. The fact is, though, that if you note, the district has to make sure that it exhausted all possibilities. So we could not ask for a waiver and still have a week and a half left of June and expect to get the waiver. We have to show that we've gone every single day that we feasibly could go in order to accommodate the 180 days. And that was clearly stated on the conference call as well, which is understandable. That's what the state statute. Obviously, there's another layer to this, which you saw over here, long-term, which is if, God forbid, schools were closed based on a federal or state level, that might trigger a different result in terms of the waiver. And again, I'm not in the position, nor I don't believe anyone is in the position right now to speak to that. But again, we do have to be cognizant. We're seeing in other countries that schools are being closed. We see in other states schools are being closed. So that would be something that I don't have the answers on. That would be something that we would have to get from at another time.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask again because I'm still confused. So when April vacation comes, if we haven't done 15 days, then we would take from there. But if we done 10 days, then we wouldn't take from there?
Correct. So
Okay.
we would have to go first with our calendar.
Okay.
So our calendar says that our last day of school technically right now is
Okay.
Friday, the 19th of June.
Okay.
What we would do, though, is, so again, if we have nothing that happens before then, we would go to the Friday the 19th, everybody would have an April vacation.
Got it.
But once we hit that next point, we would then have to go beyond the 19th that following week, and then there's 2 days actually the following week after that. So there's 7 days, plus the 3 that we go, so there's 10 days in June that we presently aren't scheduled to go to school, that we would have to go to school.
Okay.
If we exhausted those 10 days, then we would be eligible to apply for the waiver.
Mrs. Raccio, and then Mr. Russ.
This may be premature, Dr. Menzo, but you may have heard this question. If there was a day or even 2 days that we had to close the school, that means that for parents who might be listening, that the daycare in the school would not be able to operate,
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just
And
want to make sure.
that's one of the phone calls we have to make after this.
Okay,
If consensus is taken, we're going to be calling YMCA to make sure they're aware of not only Friday's recommendation for the late arrival, but also for the fact that they need to understand that if schools close, their programs are closed. That's why communicating childcare arrangements is so essential.
Right. But Friday they would able, if they so choose,
Friday they
would be
could, but
able
we just need to
open.
let
Right,
them
okay.
know that.
Thank you.
Because they're going to have to, they potentially would stay open long.
I know, they have
Yeah.
staffing and everything to accommodate. Thank you.
Mr. Russ.
Yeah, what happens if we have a school where their cases are presented and we make a decision, we have to close that school? Do the other schools stay open?
Again, that decision has to be made at the time. We talked, when I met with the mayor on Friday with the health department director, we talked about the fact that depending on the amount of time a school needs to be closed, we might close the district, we might just close that school. It really is dependent on the situation. And I think that's the challenging thing. There are so many ways to slice this. What we're hearing and what we consistently hear is that our schools, when we met with our maintenance vendors and our staff, our schools, if we had to close all 12 schools, include all 12 schools, it would take us 2 days. If we have to close one school, or we have to clean one school, we know that it could take us about 4 to 5 hours, because we experienced that yesterday with Cook Hill Parker Farms. So again, the goal is to keep schools open. We did not hear in the conversation today at all, and actually the health director from Wallingford said to me, did you hear in the conversation that they were saying schools should be closed? And I said, I did not hear that. We did not hear that. We heard about large crowds, large events, and we heard about, there were a lot of questions about the waiver in the event that schools had to be closed. But we're trying to keep schools as open as much as possible. As was also stated, the virus has not been associated with children. The only thing is, which was mentioned today, is that children might be carriers. While they might not exhibit the symptoms, they might be transferring them to adults. So that's the other side of the equation. Again, I am not an epidemiologist, but we do take our advice from the state. So again, at this point, school closures will be based on case by case if necessary. And the idea would be to get them back open and running as soon as possible. And we actually shared this with the teachers union and the administrators union today, and there was consensus that that made sense. But again, we will take the guidance at the time from the experts, the latest guidance they have. So if this were to happen, God forbid, 2 weeks from now, what is stated today, we would have to call the state, we would get their guidance, they would give us more information, and it determines on the actual scenario in terms of who has contracted the virus, to what extent have they had exposure to students or to the population. I've learned a lot about the decision-making tree over the last 24 hours from the state, from the CDC, as well as from the Department of Public Health, that there is a decision tree that they made, and it all focuses on who has the symptoms and what is their contact with the people that you're calling about. And that's really what the town and the state have really focused on. So we would take it case by case.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
I would just like to also share that hopefully parents have received the email. They went out early afternoon. We have also its pop-up on our website. We've started additional information, stored all the information on COVID on our webpage. So we're keeping a chronology of every communication like we do for budget or facility study. I didn't even have to ask my administrative assistant to do it. She already had done it because we're used to doing that. So we want people to know we're not trying to avoid communication. I did respond to all communication that I received today by phone to every parent who called, and I have to say it was only about 3 to 4 parents who called. I did respond to every email I received last night up until about 11:30, and I also responded to emails that were sent to principals that they didn't necessarily feel comfortable to respond to today as well. So I either called or responded by email. In addition, I did have 2 news media outlets, 3, the local news media that I sent my emails out to, one of which is in the audience who contacted me last night. I sent it out to him around 10:30 last night. And then the other 2 were TV media. One I spoke to on the phone, and the other one I sent an email because that's how they corresponded. So we are keeping up with all communications, as we have always done as an administrative team, and we will continue to do so. As I mentioned earlier, I've now spoken to the Health Department 3 times today. We had a meeting with the mayor at which we discussed this as well. We will continue to keep those lines of communication open. We are very, very fortunate in Wallingford that we have such a collaborative team and we have trust amongst each other. Yesterday, when we had the situation emerge at Cook Hill and then Parker Farms, Health Department was immediately available. My team, which I cannot thank enough, central office team, triaged together, came together, was supportive, even if it was just, you got this. That was very helpful because these are not the times that you want to do things that would be perceived as not the right things for children and families. So we are working hard on this. I appreciate the positive feedback from board members as well. And also, not every email was a negative one. We received some very nice positive emails, and conversations with parents this afternoon were, we know you got this, but we just had to call because there are children, and I get that. So again, we want to also thank the staff at Cook Hill Parker Farms. I sent them an email this afternoon thanking them for their professionalism. We actually I'll just share with you our attendance rates today. We had 41 students out at Cook Hill, which was not incredibly high because they did have recently a stomach bug that went through the school, and I believe there were more out during that. And then we only had 21 students out at Parker Farms. So again, I think those numbers show that parents trust and respect what we're trying to accomplish. Our staff attendance today was extremely high at both schools as well. So that shows their high level of professionalism and trust in what we're trying to accomplish. I would also like to take a moment and thank our maintenance staff, because Mr. Deptula and his team jumped right in, and I think he was sick of hearing me call him or text him and say, here's another situation. Again, and even this morning, calling him on the way in very early, just being able to jump in. And none of this, we're not taking any of this lightly. We're working very hard. I also would like to say that Mr. Bondi has put together a document that we'll integrate in another update with families about the fact that all of our food services staff have been trained in appropriate hand washing, preparation. So we are looking at all facets of our organization, from transportation, cleaning the buses every day, to our schools, to our cafeterias. Our health services, our nurses are keeping data, tracking the data every day. Our nurse coordinator communicates any concerns, who then we communicate with the health department, as well as our medical advisor, Dr. Carlos Valentin. So I think we're doing the best we can. There's probably always things we can improve upon, and we will look to do so. But again, I appreciate your support. I cannot thank our staff throughout the district at all levels for their support. Because they truly have stepped up as we would expect and have always expected and has always seen to this challenge and risen to it and done a great job. It was brought to my attention that over the course of 11 years, we've had a variety of opportunities to come together as a community. And each time we have done so in a way that I think other people in other districts say, hey, that's pretty amazing. So I don't think this will be different. I'm quite confident that with the mayor's assistance, all the town agencies, our teachers, our students, our staff, and the families, we will be able to get through this. We just need to, and it's challenging, focus on the facts and try as much as possible to distill them from the emotions. And I know that's easier said than done, even myself. So I will pause there so we have the recommendations regarding the events to take consensus on, and then also the late arrival on Friday for students, so that we could appropriately prepare and give the teachers the necessary time to at least begin. They're never going to finish, but at least begin and show them the respect they deserve in order to get this work accomplished with our administrators as well.
Okay, so we're taking consensus on both of those things at the same time.
If we could.
Okay, cool. So we will start with Mr. Ross.
Yes.
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 And yes.
Thank you. And as I said, we are going to just excuse ourselves. We promise we will come back,
Sure.
but we feel that it's important to get this done now so that we don't have people concerned and worried. All right? Thank
Sounds
you.
good. Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna give them a second to exit and then. All right. Cool. So, moving on to Article 2 of the agenda. Acceptance of the Operations Committee minutes. Did anyone have any edits?
Yes, Madam Chair, just an addition to the February 19th, 2020 minutes, if you could just have them add, under meeting called to order, the Special Operations Committee meeting.
Yes, I spoke to Robin about that today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so consensus on acceptance of minutes, starting with Mr. Ross,
Yes.
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 Yes, with the correction.
Yes.
and yes with correction. Okay. So we will be now moving on to the financial reports. Mr. Barone,
Good evening.
good evening.
So I believe you have my financial forecast, and we had, the projection increased about $170,000 from the prior month, and there were two main drivers. One being the excess cost. We've got the estimate from the state, and the other being the utilities, which we hadn't projected until this month. So the increase in the surplus gives us an unencumbered, uncommitted balance of $373,381, and it gives us an unencumbered balance of $773,469. The difference is that $400,000 and change that we set aside for curriculum items. Okay, so just to talk about a couple of those changes on the excess cost, we have what is the state's first estimate on the reimbursement, and it was obviously significantly higher than we thought. So the way this works is we file a report at the beginning of December, and we are now getting the estimate on that report. So the state will be paying us, or possibly even has paid us, I believe, 75% of that amount. And then we file another report at the beginning of March. It's actually filed. And at that point, the state will refine these numbers, and we will get our final 25% payment in May. And then after the school year, we will put the final actual numbers. And then the auditors will come in and audit that and make any adjustments. And then the state will true up any difference, whether it's an increase or decrease, with the town's ECS grant.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Any questions on that?
It's clear as mud.
Clear as mud? Okay. I got an
I'll
example I'll
probably
show you
have to
later,
watch
too.
that 3 more times on the video.
You know, as far as the utilities, we typically wait till this month to project. We're projecting an increase, surplus of about 36,000, and that's driven primarily by electricity. The natural gas is in deficit, and the oil is a little bit in deficit, but that one tends to swing because it's based on deliveries, not really consumption. So if the tanks are filled at the end of the month, they get in the numbers. If they're filled, on the third of the month, then they're in next month's. So that moves a little bit. Couple other items that happened. Transportation dropped about $25,950 because we assigned a couple more trips. Salaries, the deficit increased by about $19,000 because we added a special ed teacher, I believe. Was it special ed teacher?
Yeah.
Preschool, I'm sorry, preschool teacher that we had budgeted for next year, but we decided to bring in this year. And then contingency really had no change. And Medicare, Social Security, it's a little bit of an adjustment there, and that's in a nutshell, I guess, the effect from last month to this month.
Awesome. Any questions? I have none either. Should we move to the Munis report, or?
The Munis report is just backup
Just
to this.
backup.
It's really, it's just a snapshot of what's in our financials, but the projection that we put together is the better number to look at, because we anticipate, we take certain things
It
into
actually tells us our
anticipation.
position. Yeah.
Sure.
Yep. Okay, cool. Awesome. So consensus on item A, starting with Mr. Ross,
Yes.
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 and yes. Okay. So moving on to the cafeteria reports, Mr. Bondi.
Good evening.
Good evening.
For February, the cafeteria had $185,818 in revenue. And for expenses, there was $181,156. And we actually had a surplus of $4,662. Our reimbursement detail and federal lunch money, we had $76,504. Breakfast was $4,205, and the state reimbursement was $1,774 for a total of $82,483. We had 19 days of service, $9,780 in revenue per day versus $9,535 in expenses per day. We served 41,246 meals, which averaged to 2,171 per day. For our current year-to-date, we have income of $1,132,385, expenses of $1,156,326, and our total loss so far this year is $2,942. I'm sorry, $23,942. I wish it was.
Nice try.
Our total reimbursement is $513,526, and that also includes Healthy Foods and a state breakfast payment in earlier months. Our days served so far this year is 115. Our revenue per day is $9,847. Our expenses per day are $10,055. We have served 246,173 meals, and the average is meals served per day is 2,141.
Okay, awesome. And Mr. Russ?
Yeah, on the breakfasts, I see we increased 600 over the time frame.
I'm sorry, on the,
On reimbursement detail,
yes.
where they reimbursed us for breakfast.
Meaning we served more breakfast
Yeah,
this year than last
yeah.
year, correct?
Is that consistent? Is that?
Yes, so far. I'm not sure what it is month to month. It's usually, we usually serve more. I think there was one month, maybe in September, October, where we actually served less, but overall, we're serving more breakfast than we did last year.
I'm glad to see that's going
Yes,
up.
yes.
You know, it's not that I'm complaining about it. I would like to see it double, you know, but
Mhm.
thank you very much.
Okay. Should we, Mrs. Raccio, sorry.
When we look at the ending inventory, and I know this is the first year that we're breaking that out, that's $78,601 of inventory that we have on hand. How perishable is that? And if we have to close schools, are we at risk to, should we be looking at that to not,
Yeah,
like,
most of
order?
it is frozen. It's in the central warehouse. And we do keep an eye on that freezer.
Okay,
So that we know that it's operating efficiently and whatnot. So that, I'm paranoid about that.
okay. And we expect that to get, if that's mostly frozen foods, we
It's
expect that to
going down
get to
significantly,
zero
yes.
probably by June.
I would hope so,
Okay,
yes.
okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, should we move on to operations summary?
The operation summary is basically a backup to
Okay,
the cafeteria profit and loss statement.
Sure.
It just lists revenues, meal counts from year to year, and expenses and days served
okay,
from year to year.
all right, so participation is also that,
Participation is, it details the students.
participation rates by school.
Correct,
Yes.
yes, thank you.
Sure. And then, improvement opportunity report, I didn't see anything new this month.
Can I stay on participation? Sorry.
Sure. Go ahead.
Can you, and I think we might have mentioned this a couple months ago, the percentage of free and reduced students, it's kind of, there's some schools that almost 73% of the students who are eligible for the free reduced lunch are taking it, and then we have one outlier that's less than 50%, 48.7.
Correct.
Do we know what that was for?
That is Cook Hill. There are currently 150 students eligible. We do about 75 per day amongst those students. And that is a pre-K through 2 school. For kindergarten, for preschool, I believe there are 16 eligible to eat. We're serving about 5 per day. Kindergarten, there are 25 students eating per day. I'm sorry, this is just free and reduced, this does not include
Right, right.
full pay.
I guess when I look at it, and I don't know why, but I get it that there's 153 eligible and 48% are using the benefit, if you want to
Correct,
look at it that
yes.
way. But I look at Moses Y, and that's also a pre-K2 school.
Yes.
There's 101 eligible, and 71% are using
Yeah,
it.
I'm not
Is
really
there a different
sure.
marketing, or is there a different strategy that
Um,
maybe the principals, teachers?
No, I'm not sure if
cafeteria,
it has
like-
anything to do with demographics.
Because I want to see the kids eat. I know we all do.
Yes.
So,
What I really need to do is go through, and I was looking for a report that would detail this today, and unfortunately couldn't find one. I need to go through and see, of those kindergartners in enrollment, or of the preschool in enrollment, what percentage are free and reduced, and then go in and see why they're not
okay.
utilizing
I
that.
think Mrs. Turner and Mr. Burrow might have had something there. No? Yeah, okay.
Well, the question was, did we reduce the eligible students for the students?
We
that are-
did.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that that wasn't in that.
Yeah, it
Correct.
used to be much higher.
yes,
Yeah, we took their, it used to be a couple hundred higher.
correct,
Right,
yes.
right. All right. I don't know what the answer is then.
At this point, I do not
It just
either.
jumped out at me
And it
again this
needs-
month.
It does need
So,
more research.
It's a consistent question I have.
Yes. So we will,
Thank
try
you,
to find
Mrs.
an answer
Allison.
for you.
Sure. Did you want to talk about the breakfast expansion pilot, or would you do you want to leave it as a red document?
No, I would like to talk about it.
Okay.
Can, I believe we skipped over,
We skipped over a couple
Well,
Eunice.
things.
the inventory improvement report, there was
Yes.
no, there was.
there was
something
nothing
new.
new this month.
And then the Munis report. I
Munis
was just
report is just
assuming
a
it's
backup.
Yeah.
You want to take consensus on those five first? and
Yeah.
that-
Sure.
Should that be how we did it?
Yeah, usually that's what we do.
Yeah.
Okay, and we don't want to include breakfast expansion? as
That's
that
different.
We'll do it separate.
into-
December, I think,
Okay.
because it's
All right,
not the normal.
so, just a note on people who got, the paper documents. Your report, it was just called to my attention, said January, your, minutes. But these are the financial reports for February, so, and it's been updated online also. So, just in case you noticed that. So taking consensus on February's cafeteria reports, items B1 through B5, starting with Mr. Ross.
Yes.
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 And yes, okay. So moving into the breakfast expansion pilot, Mr. Bombi.
Okay, so what we would like to do with the board's blessing is, well, let me go into, we have two target schools that we'd like to expand breakfast into, which is Parker Farms and Cook Hill. I'm sorry, find my, yes, thank you. As for Parker Farms, I actually met with both principals. Both principals are on board. They're very eager for breakfast to start. And we discussed where and when we would serve breakfast and how we would do it. At Parker Farms, we decided on a grab-and-go breakfast that would be served in the vicinity of the Four Corners hallway where the students come in. We would have something set up and the students would grab and go into their classrooms and eat there. Students would have a choice of probably 2 prepackaged breakfast entrees. They'd eat in the classroom before school starts. As for cleanup, waste barrels would be placed in strategic locations in each hallway in front of multiple classrooms to accommodate cleanup. Our only issue, or my only issue, is it remains to be determined how students who obtain breakfast would be identified each day, because we do need to plug them into the computer to make sure that we know that they're eating. And it was suggested possibly a daily roster completed by the classroom teacher and maybe forwarded to the cafe each day. That may be an option. At Cook Hill, grab-and-go breakfast would be served in the cafeteria. Breakfast service would be monitored by the cafeteria manager in that cafeteria. Students would have a choice of prepackaged breakfast entree or a breakfast cereal and milk. Students would eat in the cafeteria before the start of school, and students who obtain breakfast can be identified as they go through the breakfast line on the register. So,
Sorry.
go ahead.
No, no,
Mrs.
no.
Levesque.
I just have a question. Could you give me an example of what a prepackaged breakfast
Yes,
entree might be?
there are some great products out there. Prepackaged cinnamon bun, whole grain, everything's whole grain. Prepackaged cinnamon buns, prepackaged banana breads, They have what they call prepackaged whole grain pastries with fillings that meet all the state criteria and the federal criteria. And the industry has done a very good job of providing products that meet the grab-and-go concept for breakfast. So it's a very, we wouldn't have any issues at all with students not wanting to participate, I don't think.
And each entree would be served with milk?
There are 3 components to a breakfast.
Mhm.
There are an entree which needs to either consist of 2 whole grains or 1 meat and 1 grain. I know it's kind of hard to explain if you're not in the industry. And there has to be a fruit. Students need to take a fruit every day, 1 cup of fruit, and they have an option of taking a milk also. They need to take 2 out of 3 of the components.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Ross and then Mr. Reynolds.
Yeah, I have a concern in the Cook Hill School with the grab and go. I know in Parker Farms, it's right there in where they all come together, but my memory is the cafeteria is off the beaten path from where the kids come in off the bus, and when we're dealing with kindergartners, it's gonna take forever.
Yes, I probably would agree with you, but that is what the principal has indicated to me. So, as we go forward, I'm sure we can adjust.
Yeah, because
I think that's
I
an
just, we currently in all the schools, when we dismiss to the gymnasium, and we don't line everybody up in the gym by buses because of that reason, so the chaos isn't
Yeah.
there.
Yes.
When they get off the bus, the kindergartners used to going off the bus to their room. Now they gotta go off the bus, go down another corridor, go into the cafeteria, come out and go back to their room. I don't see that working. Just as long as we monitor it and have the extra help there,
Yes.
just to,
Mhm.
that's my only concern about that. Thank you.
And Mr. Reynolds.
Yes, with these packages, are there any items that can be recycled?
They can all be recycled. If a student, for whatever reason, does not eat it, I would hope they would, but
Yeah.
it can go into the share table.
Well, but what I'm talking about, is the actual
Packaging.
The
packaging.
packaging.
Yeah,
I don't know. It is a form of plastic.
yeah. I know with our clientele, especially with the little ones, but if there was some way that we could, if there was plastics.
Yeah, I'd have to check on that.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
That's a great question. So the next steps with your approval would be discussions with the managers in each school as well as the union, as we would need to increase hours, especially at Parker Farms. We'd have to include an extra person every day for a few hours in the morning and increase both manager positions in the morning. We need to do a letter of intent to the state of Connecticut to state the intention to participate in the school breakfast program at both Parker Farms and Cook Hill schools. We would need to add a breakfast service module for the computerized point of sale systems in both those schools. Establish start dates in each school. Do an action plan for breakfast marketing and parent information. And then amend the food service ordering and central distribution systems to include breakfast items. So that's where we stand as of now.
Okay. Alrighty, so let's take consensus on that, starting with Mr. Ross
Yes.
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 Yes,
and yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bondi.
thank you for doing that. That's been a wish list item of mine for many years, as Dr. Menza will tell you.
Something I neglected to mention was, there's also break-even calculations.
Mhm.
We saw that.
At Cook Hill, our break-even is 30 breakfasts, which is entirely doable, and at Parker Farms, it's 63.
Mhm.
So that's another plus. So, one other thing I'd like to mention is that the healthy foods will be at the board meeting on the 23rd with a renewal for healthy foods. I just want to mention that.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. And item C, Mr. Deptula, where would you like to start?
I think we'll start with the project summaries. I'm going to touch base on a couple things quickly.
Cool.
We resumed work on the Sheehan High School softball field. We got clay the end of last week, and my staff immediately started installing that clay. That was completed today. We have enough clay to rebuild the pitcher's mound. I'll know better by the end of the week where we stand as far as a completion date. But they've done a phenomenal job. We've had 3 groundskeepers, sometimes 4 groundskeepers working on it. Our plumber has assisted and our carpenter has assisted in things that they specialize in. So that project's moving along nicely. We have one other item that might be of interest, especially in this during this crisis with the virus. We started installing hands-free paper towel dispensers in all our schools. The schools that we started with were the high schools. That was primarily due because those contracts came up and we were able to work that into the cleaning contract. So the vendor was required to not only purchase but to install those hands-free dispensers in all areas. Recently, we made the push to satisfy the nurses' needs and the food service needs in all the schools. That, for the most part, has been accomplished. We still have a few more to do. And we've moved on to the middle schools. At each middle school, I think we're probably shy maybe half a dozen dispensers. The majority of the student areas have been retrofitted. And these are nice dispensers. They work quite well. It's a simple idea. As you pull the sheet down, it gets cut off, so you never touch that next sheet. They're very reliable. There's no batteries, nothing like that. So this is a positive move, and in this climate that we're in right now, it kind of fit in quite well. So that's it for the project summary on construction and the completed. There's no more completed items. Nothing's changed.
Okay.
So I'd like to move on to the energy audit.
Excellent.
Okay. We have the handout. This is specifically from Fuss and O'Neill, the low bidder on this contract, and they've given us a breakdown. Dominic has also produced a spreadsheet on the first page with the cost breakdown. So I think we'll take a look at the level of audits. The entry-level audits, preliminary energy use analysis, and ASHRAE Level 1 audit. It's relatively simple. And this is basically called a walkthrough audit. They don't spend a lot of time doing it, but it gives you a roadmap of the projects that are more easily completed. The projects that could result from this, it will probably be 4 or 5 of the lowest hanging fruit, the easiest projects. Moving on to the level 2, that gives you more information, and it will give a future design team more information to work with, and will probably result in more projects identified. That doesn't mean to say that when we do hire a design team, they may have their own ideas. The level 1 audit may not give that design team all the information they may need. So typically for school system, they would go and do the level 2 audit. That will supply a design team with pretty much everything they need to know. When you look at the level 3 audit, that gets a lot more complicated, and typically it's not done in public school systems. The feeling there is that there may not be enough opportunities generated by that level 3 audit. It certainly could be done, but you're talking about a much longer process. It's at least a year process to do that. And they'll set up monitoring equipment in the schools. They'll watch things much closer. If you look at the end of the report, there's several references from different facilities where different levels of audits were done. And if you look at the schools, you'll see that the vast majority of those audits were indeed level 2 audits. Doesn't mean that we couldn't do something different, but if you look at the costs involved, The amount of money that was approved for the energy efficiency study and the additional facilities study is $125,000. So that may fall short depending on what you choose from the audit menu. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a-
Mrs. Purcell.
I have a couple questions. One is, so the price tag for level 2, is it 72.5 plus 99.5? Or is it just 99.5? Thank you. And my other question is, we just did like a whole bunch of stuff with the lighting and all the light bulbs and all that. Has that been taken into account? Because it looked like that was some of the things that they were going to do.
The only lighting that we worked on was the stage lighting, and.
Okay. Oh, I thought we had the electric division come in and look at all our lighting.
Oh, they did the audit portion of it.
Right.
But that audit will be combined with this. Fuss and O'Neill is required to take that information and apply it to a future.
I understand that, but I'm just saying that the price didn't come off the fact that they don't have to do that part of it?
No, this was the low bidder. The
Okay.
next lowest bidder was $150,000 more.
Okay.
Mr. Reynolds.
Yes, with the level 2 audit, Mark, would that keep the options open for, alternative energy, reducing?
It will. The
Yeah.
instructions are that they are to look at sustainability.
Okay.
And options, including microgrids, because we have a unique opportunity in Wallingford, because we have 2 campuses that not only encompass schools, they also encompass some town assets also. So we've instructed them to look at all those options. Certainly, a level 3 would maybe produce more of those options, but I think the board would be satisfied with the amount of projects that come out of a level 2 audit. Fuss and O'Neill doesn't feel that a level 3 is necessary. And if you look at history, not just in Connecticut, but across the country, you'll see that level 3 is seldom done in a public setting. It's usually for, industry and companies that have a lot of manufacturing loads and different things that need to be looked at critically. Things like milling machines, mills, factory equipment, that's really where the level 3 would shine. But we don't really have that situation here, and I don't think it's necessary myself. I'm just based on what I know, and I don't want to influence your decision here. But it certainly looks like the way to go, the best value to the town would be a level 2 audit.
Yeah, just a follow-up. Several weeks ago, I went to an all-day conference, and it was actually run by people in the field, and specifically, they were actually representatives from school districts. Now, there was one thing that they brought up, and I can't remember the actual, model name, but there's a ventilation system that's available that will monitor CO2 levels in a classroom.
That's exactly what we would be installing in the future.
Yes, okay. And just to let everybody know is that it's been shown that increased levels of CO2 will cut down on students being attentive. They will get drowsy. They may start to have little...
We unfortunately don't have that problem in the system. We have just the opposite. We have way too much ventilation, way too much outside air. Not that we haven't reduced it, but from the 2007 renovations, we were left with a surplus of fresh air. And some of these units have been, the automation has been modified so that they do run on air quality, but not everywhere. And during those renovations, we got like 100% outside air exchange in a lot of buildings, a lot of big air handlers, bigger than are needed. And in fact, the audit will probably show us that some of that equipment is now outdated because it was so big when it was installed.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Mrs. Purcell.
Okay, so Dominic, 125 was allocated. This is more than 125, and it doesn't give us any money for the facility study, so where would the money come from? Where would you suggest if we wanted to do
I
this?
think we'd have to revisit the unencumbered funds for this year
Okay.
and see if we could reprogram some of those. We took a portion of it for curriculum, and then a lot of the other items we identified for strategic plan items, and possibly we could look at removing some of the strategic plan items, and doing, using that to fund the rest of the study. I'm assuming you're talking about the level 2 study.
Well, I'm
And
just,
then I think we would also need to find, additional money too for facilities,
Facility
the
study.
deep dive, as we've been calling it.
so here's my question. So it's gone out to bid. How much time, if we don't do this tonight, because we need to have some conversations, it sounds like, when do we have to say yes or no? Like, is there a time limit on that?
We'd like to get it moving as soon as possible, but you still have time. And the Fuss and O'Neill has guaranteed us that they will hold their pricing for the entire calendar year. They were planning on working on this project up until November, so that wasn't an overly big commitment for them to make,
Okay,
but they did do it.
okay.
Mr.
no,
Ra-
you can-
Mrs. Rashia?
Dominic, right now, we have a projected surplus of 373,000. So before we would transfer that to, before we would transfer that to the 1% account at the end of the year, we could utilize more of that. Is that correct?
Correct. But just to clarify though, when we did the budget, we went through the strategic plan. We took certain items, we put them in the budget as a request under strategic, and other items we said we would try to use 1% or unencumbered funds for.
Yes.
So I think we would have to make
To the
some
tune of
decisions.
650-ish.
But we don't know what that number would be from the mayor yet to identify how far down on the list we would go for our strategic items.
Correct.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yeah, I don't know. I was out of state all weekend, so I just happened to get a look at this email that was sent to us mid-morning. Or it was sent to us on Saturday. I only had a chance to read it mid-morning. But if the board members haven't read it, I think it's definitely worthwhile. Because it was sent to us by a local resident, and it kind of lays it out. And Mark and I have been talking about this, that sometimes, I'm not saying this all the time, but sometimes you have to spend some money to save some money. And if we're gonna go through something where we're looking at, as Marcel already brought up, the amount of money, well, let's make sure we do it the right way, and also hopefully do it in a way that eventually down the road we can save. Especially money with the energy expenses.
So, Mrs. Purcell?
I'm sorry. I'm just wondering if we can table this decision until we have our budget books in front of us, and I can kind of see what we're not going to not put out, if we wanted to do this?
I would tend to agree with you. Mr. Russ,
I have a question, but it's not on the energy audit. Can I ask it now?
what's it about?
Partial roof replacement.
Well,
He brought it up and then he skipped over it and went right into it. I had a question for him on that.
let's close this out and then we'll go there.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. So, let's take consensus on tabling this until we have a little bit more information about where our budget stands. So I will start with Mr. Ross.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
When would you like to table this until?
Just until we have the
So,
information so that we know how much of the unencumbered we would actually have to use.
okay.
So, when we get a decision from the mayor, essentially. So I believe that's May.
April 1st.
May
No.
1st. April 1st? April 1st. So to our next operations meeting?
But we
Or-
wouldn't go through the strategic until May 11th. That's,
A little
late.
late.
what do you think, Mark?
I
Yes.
think you're gonna cut this study kind of short by doing that.
Right.
You know,
I mean, conceptually, could we agree which one we would want and then have them come back to us with how they would recommend funding it at a later meeting? Whether it's from this year's unencumbered or from the 1%? Because that's really our two choices.
Right.
It's either gonna come from the 1% account, or it's gonna come from this year's remaining balance.
Yep.
And either way, we're not gonna do something that's strategic.
Right.
We'd have to give up something strategic to do this. So would we give up something that we've already put in the 1% and then we were planning on doing strategic, or would it come off of this year's unencumbered? Did I say that? Okay.
I just want to clarify, when I said 1%, we took the current year strategic items that were for the budget and put them in anticipating next year's 1%. It wasn't, I mean, the whatever's in the 1%
Correct.
identified, we're not talking about
Correct.
adjusting. I
But
don't
really,
believe
those
that.
are only two pots of money, if you will.
Well, it's all one pot essentially,
Right.
from the perspective
Well, it would
that
be-
we allocated. We earmarked a bunch of it already, right?
You
But it would
earmarked
either be
part of
current
it.
year or prior 1%. Those are our two options.
Well, we've got money in prior 1%.
Right.
Or 125. And I would think that, yeah, current year, which it, you know, depending on when we actually started the work, would go into 1% theoretically by town approval in October, let's say. Okay.
I would like to point out an option that you do have also, because they are willing to hold this pricing, you could vote to approve the level 1, and then at a later date, approve the level 2. They'll do that, and as long as they're still on site and actively working on the project, there's no additional cost to that option. So that may be a way to go to relieve
get them
you of
started.
that concern.
That gets
yeah.
the project
And that
rolling.
gets the
Oh, that's-
PO going, you know, because right now, we're at a standstill without that PO being written.
So in that case, we'd be committing a little bit less than half than we put aside, right? Because a little more than half. We put aside 125,000, we'd be committing 72.5 to start this project.
Okay.
Read me the words before I say yes.
Okay, so we are taking consensus to approve starting the level 1, which is 72,500 for now. And we will revisit level 2 at a later date when we have more information.
Yes,
Yes.
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 And yes. So we
Thank
can
you.
start that PO. Thank you very much. All right, and thank you guys all for your input too. The Yale Research
no, I
Study.
have questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before we close out, Mr. Deptula, Mr. Ross has a question on the roof project.
We still have on the second floor at DAG, a catch bucket in the hallway, catching rainwater coming down.
That's correct. There are trays there that are made to do the job, and they're working fine, and there's no issues there, no health issues, no air quality issues. They will be getting a new roof this summer, though.
Yeah, but I'm just concerned that bucket on the wall,
There is no bucket in the hall. There's a manifold system that collects the water and brings it into a sink.
into a sink. But
Correct.
there is a bucket in the wall that's collecting the water that is not going through that. I'm positive of that.
I was there yesterday, and the day before, there's no bucket in the hall at all.
That it's been moved in the past week.
So I can
Okay.
look at that. It's not a big issue.
Yeah.
We're dealing with concrete and masonry structures.
You know,
so,
I'm just concerned the kid's gonna trip over the bucket.
we
On
can
the second
rectify that
floor.
easy enough.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ray.
Okay, thank you both. And sorry to try to cut you short, Mr. Ross.
That's all right, I understand.
All right, item D, Yale Research Study.
That's me.
Awesome.
Yale's Social Cognitive Development Lab reached out to Dr. Menzo and I, and they're asking if they could access some of our students to do some research. And the research is for preschool through middle school. It's an opt-in research study, so we would send letters home to parents in the schools, and we would say, if you would like your child to participate in this research study, please sign this and return. The study is, what will happen is one of the researchers, which would be a Yale grad student, would come and spend about 10 to 15 minutes playing games, looking at social stories and pictures, and just having fun with the researcher. And at any time that the child was done, they would end the study with them. The benefits to the school district is we would be provided an anonymous report. It's basically a summary report of our students and their social cognitive development. And as well, they will come in and do some parent trainings if we wanted them to do parent trainings, or they would provide the students with small little gifts and gestures to that effect. I attached to the agenda the sample agreement to participate in the research study that the parents would sign, as well as an introductory letter that we would send to them from the schools. So what I'm asking is permission to allow this study to occur in our schools.
Mrs. Persing.
I feel like I have all the questions tonight. 2 questions. One is there a minimum number of students that need to participate?
There is not a minimum number. They would like as many as they can receive, but they'll take whatever they can get.
And the other question was just, you said that they were going to supply prizes, and that's just concerning to me, because I just would feel bad for students who parents said no, that their kid didn't
Correct.
get a
So,
prize.
The other option is them coming in and doing training or things for the school, so we would opt on that one. I wanted to give you the full picture, but we probably would not opt on them giving individual things to students, but more doing something larger for the school community.
Okay.
I agree
I'd
with
feel
you.
better
Yeah,
about that.
I agree.
Okay.
Mrs. Raccio?
As a parent whose child did one of these studies, did multiple studies like this, maybe we could also have them do the certificates, Little Scientist and stuff. They were actually pretty cool. My
Sure.
kids both got them and liked them.
Yeah, absolutely, we can look into that.
I'm the mom that framed them and put them up in the bedroom.
Anyone else? Okay, so let's take consensus on that. Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Gotta follow him.
For the first time in
Pressure's
my
on,
life, you have
Pat.
me speechless. Yes.
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 And yes. Thank you, Mrs.
Thank you.
Turner. Ms. Turner, sorry.
Thank you.
All right, school calendar.
Hi.
Is this you, Ms. Belisi?
This is me. Good evening, everyone. So you have in front of you the minutes from our meeting, our Educational Council Committee meeting from February 10th, and also a draft of the calendar for the 2021-2022 school year. So I guess I can kind of just go through quickly some of the highlights of what we discussed there. So if you take a look at under section 3, we talked about the professional development days. So we have outlined in the draft there the 3 full professional development days of August 23rd, the 24th, and 25th, with the start of school on August 26th of 2021. We also outlined on here, looking at the PSAT calendar, religious holidays, 8 early release days throughout the school year. So you can see those detailed out: September 23rd, October 21st, December 9th, January 27th, February 24th, March 17th, April 28th, and May 19th. We also discussed early release days for the holidays, so we have 2 of those that we've added into this calendar. One being November 24th, 2021, for the day before Thanksgiving, and then December 23rd, 2021, for the day before the winter break. We also accounted for April 7th as our daytime conferences, so we typically do an early release day then as well. Item number 3 under there is one thing that we had a discussion about, and we actually were kind of come up with a tie on our committee here on February 28th, 2022, which would be winter break. So we have President's Day the following Monday, which is February 21st, and we talked about February 18th as to whether or not to make that an early release day or keep it as a full school day. So that is why it is on the calendar here right now as in blue with a question mark on the proposal of the calendar. And then we talked about moving, then we obviously added in for April break, and we put the language in that the first 8 days of school lost, for school closing, made up at the end of the school day, end of the school year. Any days beyond the 8 will be made up at the beginning of spring vacation, starting on April 11th. In the event that we have more than the 8 days or the school closures after spring break, the Board of Ed would determine the last day of school.
Mrs. Raccio, then
No,
Mrs.
Not Mrs.
Levick.
Leveck. I've been doing a lot of
Mrs.
talking.
Levick.
How do these early release days proposed in this calendar compare to what we are doing now?
Yes, so we follow pretty much the pattern that we've done in the past, what our past practice has been in terms of the days that we've picked. So typically, we've done them monthly. We've kind of broken them up and made sure that we don't typically have them all in the same time frame. If there's another day off or an early release day for a holiday or something, we typically try to make sure it's not all falling in the same week. But we follow the same pattern as we've done in the past.
I'm just wondering if this February 18th early release is in addition to what we've been doing, or it's just placed differently?
No, it is the same as what we've done, like for this past school year, February 14th, excuse me, we did do an early release day. Most districts still, some have a February break or a winter break. It's in lieu of us not having that February winter break anymore. So some districts choose to do it longer or shorter around the President's Day. For us, last year, this particular school year, we just did the early release day that Friday.
I'm just looking at past practice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Riccio.
Mrs. Blizzy, can you help me, and it's been a little bit since, and I know
Sure.
I have the minutes. For the February 18th day, what is our attendance rate for that? I know we talked about it in
Yes,
the meeting. There was
We did.
higher than usual absenteeism.
So we have, for this past February 14th, when we did the early release day, we had 39 absences on that particular day this past school year. Teacher absences.
What's a
Is that
normal,
student or teacher?
Teacher.
what's a normal Friday in February?
Sure. Let me look it up.
I know Sharon was pulling out all these kinds of numbers when we were talking about it.
Yes.
And I do want to say that, you know, we were kind of split because some of the teachers actually were in favor of having a full block where they could actually get 5 days in. And between these typical snow days that we have in February, that kind of cuts into things. And then the following week, we have 2 days. We obviously have the day off, but we also have another early release day on the 24th.
Correct.
So to have 3 shortened days within a 5-day period is where we kind of pressed pause.
Agreed, yes. To answer your question, if I just go back to the Friday before, February 7th, on that particular Friday, we had a total of 89 teacher absences that Friday before. If I go to, so we talked about, if I did look at Friday, the 21st, we had 77 absences for teachers.
So it wasn't very high then.
So the Friday of the early release day, we only had 39.
Mrs. Purcell.
Yeah, I have a few different questions.
Sure.
But I'll start with the February 18th since we're kind of on that.
Sure.
I mean, I would be for keeping the half-day personally. I think, you know, we've gone from the full week to a half-day in 2 days, and then a half-day in 1 day, and I hate to just go to 1 day. But just as a teacher from elementary level, and especially now we've been talking about this virus all the time, I just know there's a lot of people sick, and that a few days of being away from each other is not a bad thing. You know, I mean, so I would go for that, but if that didn't work out, I would rather see the February 14th be the shorter day with the PD, if you had to, and take away the 24th or whatever that day, whatever, the 24th. I mean, I prefer just to let everybody out, but that's another possibility if you're talking about too many shortened days in a 5-day period.
And Patty, that was one of the things we talked about, but we didn't think that what is the absentee rate, what would we expect the absentee rate be for PD on a shortened day for a Friday? There would be too many people who wouldn't come to PD.
But we had 39, I mean, you had the lowest of all the days she said was on the 14th.
Yeah,
though.
but for PD,
Right, I would not suggest,
we would
suggest it.
not.
Typically, just to give you the average over the past few years, on an early release day, typically, and they're not on Fridays, but when we've separated over the past, just looking quickly at like the 2016, 2017 year, just to give you kind of some past, the average was 41 absences for that. 2017, 2018, it was 48. 2018-19, it was 47. So it hovers around in the 40 mark. I think if we do it on a Friday personally, I think you'll have a
Go up.
higher,
Okay,
you'll have a higher number of teacher absences.
okay. Oh, can I ask my second question too?
Go for it.
Okay, sorry, it's not the 18th. And I don't know what we're doing currently, so maybe I'm mixed up, but I thought we used to always take from the end of February end of April vacation, and now, is that true now? Or are we taking from the beginning of April? If we go over the school number days?
I think we've done it both ways, but I think we talked about doing it from, what did I say? I think we said we'd do it
Says
the beginning.
Of this.
Well, this says
Of
the
the-
beginning, but I thought normally we did the end, that's why I was just asking. Why the
The
change?
end is Good Friday.
Right, that is why we did not. Thank you.
We had, Patty, we flipped a couple years back to line it up with parents who were at Wintergreen, because Wintergreen was taking from the Monday, and we were taking from the Friday at
Okay.
the magnet schools. But we have so few students in the magnet schools
Right.
now, where the families have students in both locations. It's not as relevant to accommodate, there's not as many families to accommodate.
Right, so I think we've typically done the beginning, but this year we did the end because Friday,
Right.
this year Friday is Good Friday, which
Good
starts
Friday.
off our
Right.
break.
Okay. I just didn't know if it was going to make it complicated for more complicated for families by changing, that's all.
I
And
don't think
Mrs.
so, I mean, it has it in we put it right on the calendar to let
Okay.
them know ahead of time.
Mrs. Allenson, Mr. Corso was at the calendar committee meeting. I don't know if he wants to add anything. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you got it.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty standard.
Okay.
We
Good.
didn't really deviate much from previous years.
Past practice, yeah, we've kind of followed the same pattern.
Okay. So, are we taking consensus on the,
On which way?
Which, I think we just have
we have to decide which way we
to
want to do
decide
it.
which way we want to look at February 18th as a early release day, or do we want to keep it as a full day of school? And our committee was split 4-4 in terms of keeping it as an early release day or making it a full day.
So should we just say what we want? Go down
Yeah,
that way?
so we would say full day or early release.
Okay.
Okay, so Mr. Ross?
Early release.
Early release.
Early release.
Early release.
Early release.
Full day.
Okay,
Okay,
so we'll make it an early
we'll
release.
make it an early release.
Okay,
All right,
okay.
so any further consensus need to be taken? I don't think,
Just on the.
just on the calendar as a whole?
Just on the proposal
yes.
as a whole, because then I will,
Yeah.
and the
The
minutes.
The minutes need to be corrected.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw the one-
April?
April, yes, I got
Yes.
it as well. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
So, taking consensus now on the minutes, Mr. Ross?
Yes.
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 Yes, with the correction.
Yes.
And yes. All right, and then finally, taking consensus on the proposed schedule with the 18th as a half-day as previously decided.
Yes.
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 And yes.
Okay,
Okay,
so then we'll bring it to the board on March 23rd. Thank you.
thank you. Now, we have information technology, the Chromebook update presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, we just wanted to give you an update of where we are with the implementation of the one-to-one Chromebook program at the high school. As you know, last year, it was started with incoming freshmen. So they were all provided a Chromebook for instructional use. They were allowed to bring them home in the evenings and weekends for schoolwork. And we did offer a protection plan, and we basically used that money for self-insurance and replaced parts as needed. And then this past June, we did collect all the Chromebooks back, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the future. This year, we took back all the carts that were in the high school, and although we had enough Chromebooks to use for all our students. Because they were in carts in classrooms, not every teacher was able to access them. So especially in the CTE areas and the special areas, they just didn't have the access to them. We collected all the carts and we redistributed them to students. We gave the seniors the oldest Chromebooks and on down, and the incoming freshmen this year got brand new Chromebooks. So as of this fall, all 9th through 12th graders were provided a Chromebook that they could take home for instructional use.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. So obviously, all students having a Chromebook expands their access. As we've been talking about, to start this meeting off, if we ever had to do distance learning, that would be extremely difficult if we were not able to provide each student with a Chromebook. Right now for 9 through 12, we do have that. All of our students have a Chromebook. It's gone very well, kind of seamless for us, and they all have access and their ability to get on Google Classroom from home now. It allows teachers and students better access to each other. We've had teachers utilize it during snow days as a method to keep up with instruction for students and give them some assignments and be able to answer any questions. Obviously, that is not something we're doing extremely consistently yet, but we do have a few teachers utilizing it very well. Green solution, it saves us on quite a bit of paper, and as teachers become more and more comfortable with Google Classroom, there'll be less and less paper production for us, which also saves on machinery at the schools. Level playing field for all students, so now all students, regardless of whether or not they can afford their own Chromebook, they have one, and it allows for that uniform operating platform, and it's gone extremely well again, like I said.
So some of the challenges and really the pains to implementing any new program where we had students that weren't bringing in their Chromebooks to school, either charged or left them home, and they were able to borrow one. We do have extras in the library they could borrow. Unfortunately, they were taking a little bit of advantage of that, and there were more Chromebooks out than we had provided. So the high schools did tighten up that policy a little bit. So they only have a certain number of days, and they need to bring it back in a timely manner. So we also did have a lot of accidental damage, but also some intentional damage that did need to be addressed by the principals. Intentional damage is not covered in the Chromebook protection plan. And also the biggest issue we probably had was collecting over 400 plus Chromebooks over the summer, collecting them, storing them, going through, assessing them. And that was quite a difficult process for my staff. And I don't know how we would be able to do that with even more than that. And we also did inventory tracking was something that we need to improve upon. So we do have everything barcoded in our Follett Destiny system, so we can check things out to students and check them back in. And now we know when a student has 2 Chromebooks or more. So.
And again, our recommendation on the Chromebook collection at the end of the year is not to have it. That we are asking that our students be able to keep the Chromebooks through the summer for a number of reasons. First and most important is we do have students that have homework over the summer, and those Chromebooks are a necessity for them to be able to complete their homework assignments over the summer. 2, it is also a collection nightmare for us. For us at Lyman Hall, we'd be collecting over 1,000 Chromebooks and having to redistribute them in the same condition we received them, which leaves us open for some debate and argument with students when they come back. We are not going to photograph every computer as they come back in. Similar to a rental car, when you go get the rental car and you walk around the outside, we would have to do a similar process. And it does delay the distribution, delays the start of school pretty significantly. We were able to make it happen this year. Parents were extremely understanding, but we had lines upwards in about 3 hours. Parents were waiting for Chromebooks. So they were, like I said, extremely patient. They understood it was a kind of a one-time ordeal, but we'd really like to trust our students to take them home over the summer so they can utilize them and go from there. As I said, our AP students will have homework over the summer. This would allow them to complete that on our Google assessment as well, and our teachers could track it. And then calling the students and parents over the summer to collect Chromebooks that were not turned in was not extremely effective. So, you know, if we had 60 students that did not return their Chromebook as freshmen, at the end of the school year, we had 60 students that didn't return it by the end of the summer.
So what are other high schools doing for this? We did reach out to other high schools, the SCC high schools, to see what their policies were. And 6 out of 8 that responded reported to us that they do not collect the student Chromebooks prior to the vacation. Students do keep them home until the end of their senior year.
And I will point out, that was just those that responded in talking. We meet quarterly, all the SEC principals. Many more schools have one-to-one implementation, and most do not collect the Chromebooks, obviously because it's difficult. Some of the schools that do collect them are very small SEC schools. It's a little bit more manageable. Safety and filtering. Obviously, we've spoken about our safety and filtering during the school year. It works extremely well. We do have the ability to monitor 24/7, and we work hand in hand with the police department to monitor 24 hours a day. And we do have the flexibility to extend that through the summer and also open up some parent capabilities to monitor their children's computers.
So our recommendations moving forward is that students are allowed from grades 9 to 11 to keep their Chromebooks over the summer. Of course, we still will collect the graduating seniors after their exams. And Chromebooks would be distributed to new students on a rolling basis over the summer to try to avoid the crunch of orientation and, you know, everything at the last minute. We think that would really ease them into that. So.
And I'll also, one of the things we're going to do to make the freshman distribution go a little bit smoother is open up distribution at the start of August. So we'll have them available in the office, and parents can come in at any time during the month of August to sign out their child's Chromebook. We're not interfering with vacations. It allows our office staff to kind of deal with it in a very controlled manner, as opposed to 250 freshmen and their parents showing up on any one given day to pick up their Chromebook. So we'll have a much lengthier period to distribute the Chromebooks.
I have a quick question, and then Mrs. Purcell. So how long are the warranties on the Chromebooks? Do they last the full 4 years?
Typically, we purchase the Chromebooks for the high schools with only a 1-year manufacturer warranty.
Okay.
And however, that does not cover any accidental damage.
Sure.
So, which is the majority of the repairs we do.
I'm sure.
So,
Yeah.
We do expect them to be able to last the 4 years. I have Chromebook cards that are 8, 9, 10 years old at this point.
Oh, cool. Okay.
They don't work perfectly all the time, but they are still functioning and allow
Those are your
students the
loaners, right?
capability. Yes. Yes, they are.
The more painful the loaner is, the more
Precisely. The
quickly you
quicker
get
it
it
is, yes.
returned. Mrs. Purcell and then Mr. Ross.
So if the kids have it over the summer and something happens accidental, can they contact someone during the summer, or do they have to wait till the beginning of the school year to get it fixed?
they could, I do have staff that works all summer, so they could contact us over the summer. We'd actually prefer to repair it earlier rather than later, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Ross?
That was almost my same question. How was the warranty period, the insurance policy cover now?
So we usually, right now, it's written for a school year, so we would probably need to do like a June 30th and then a July 1, start the new policy or something like that, or we could do an August 1st. We may have to talk about that. But it would be, it's a 1 year at a time. So the next year they have the Chromebook, they have to repurchase the protection plan each year.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm going to go to Ms. Levesque and then Mr. Reynolds.
What are the % of Chromebooks that are damaged each year?
I don't have a number off the top of my head. There are some that we collected back and they were pristine. And there were some, I got one with a tire track across the front. So, which surprisingly, the
Yikes.
screen was still in use.
Oh my goodness.
Still working. That was intentional damage and the family was billed for it. But we have a significant number. To be honest, the high schoolers are actually a little bit better treating them than the middle schoolers. They're the challenge as far as damages.
And the cost of replacement fluctuates depending on what the market is at that point?
Absolutely, the cost does. It's, first of all, it's come down quite a bit. It varies year to year. When a Chromebook is broken, and it's intentional and we have to charge someone, we charge them the amount it would cost me to buy it then, not, we're not making any money on it, really. We're just charging them exactly what it costs to buy a new one, so.
And just to refresh my memory, the protection plan, what does that
The
cost?
protection plan is $30 a year, and it covers 2 incidents, and it covers theft if they file a police report within 72 hours. It does not cover lost Chromebooks or intentional damage. So if a teacher sees a child, chucking it down the hallway or something, not covered. And there have been a few where we've kind of made a determination that it definitely looks intentional. But it also, after the 2 incidents, they have no more protection. And it is optional. They can choose to just pay for the repairs instead. So, but even if the screen breaks, that's about a $30 repair. If the screen and something else breaks, you're up to 60 plus, So.
Thank you.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yes, if, let's say a family moves out of town midsummer and they don't turn the Chromebook in, what recourse do we have?
So just as with during the school year, they've got to come to us for paperwork, and just like textbooks, we are not going to deliver the paperwork until they give us the Chromebook. So that's our number one protection. We can't necessarily stop a student from enrolling, but we haven't had, really kids are pretty good with returning their items. We haven't had any issues with students withdrawing and keeping the Chromebooks yet. I don't see it becoming an issue. They really do view it as another textbook, and most of the backpacks that they're buying now come with a specific storage for Chromebooks, which is, I think, why our damage has been pretty low. Unless you're an agricultural science student, and then the parrot really likes your keys, and that seems to happen way too much.
I do want to add something. Our Chromebooks are called managed devices. So they are restricted to Wallingford Schools' email accounts. So if we know a Chromebook is lost, stolen, or a child withdraws, we basically disable that. So it's unusable. So if they move out and they take it with them, they cannot use it. Even if they wipe it out, it re-enrolls itself as a Wallingford Schools device. So we have found some that were lost or stolen, and then they showed up in the cafeteria later because there's really nothing they could do with them. So that does definitely help us.
Mrs. Recchia?
Thank you. I just wanted to be clear because you mentioned middle school in there a little bit, that this, that we're talking about tonight is just high school because middle school does not take their Chromebooks home and they do not pay for any insurance, and the district pays for any damages done because the damage is done in school. And
That's correct.
okay.
Okay, so consensus on, just an update, or do we take, no?
I think we wanted consensus over letting them keep them
keep them.
Over the
Okay.
summer.
over the summer, which is a change.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
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 And yes. We'll go back to
Thank you.
serious at the regular one.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right, so moving right along. Public comment. Do I have any public commenters? No? Awesome. Well, thank you for coming. And I will call this meeting adjourned at 8:10. Have a nice night.